Okay, this is video number 2 for 721. Remember, we're working on special quadrilaterals, how two triangles that are congruent can form some special quadrilaterals, and then how to put some information into a proof or a flow chart. Okay, so this is 7-51. Kip is confused. He put the two triangles from the previous problem together, but he did not get a parallelogram. Okay, those opposite sides are definitely not parallel. Okay, so first of all, what shape did he make? Remember from previous chapters, this is called a kite. And the definition of a kite is when two congruent sides are right next to each other. And another set of two congruent sides are right next to each other. So it's a quadrilateral. Again, you should be writing this down. With two pairs of consecutive, that means right next to each other, congruent sides. Okay, and I know that that's true because if I take a look at this, instead of rotating like we did to make a parallelogram, it looks like Kip reflected the triangle over one of the side lengths. So what transformation did Kip use? He used a reflection to create a kite. Okay, and again, if this short leg of the triangle that's connecting the 1 and the 2 marked angles, then over here, that's also the same length. Okay, when I reflect, that's the same exact part. Same thing down here, those two are the same. Okay, what do the congruent triangles tell you about the angles of this shape? Well, if I look again, this angle here just got reflected, so there is one set of opposite angles that are congruent. Okay, now unlike a parallelogram, the two consecutive angles do not add up to 180. Those are not parallel sides, okay, and therefore those do not add up to 180. Okay, so if we explore a little bit further in 52, I don't know, let's see. I don't really want to do this number 52. Instead, what I want to do is I want you to check out in the slideshow some other things that you need to know about a kite, other properties of a kite that you're going to have to study, but we're not going to do any proofs on other properties of a kite today. Instead, well, here they are. Here are the other two things you should write down. The diagonals bisect, so the one diagonal will bisect the other diagonal. Those are the same. And the two diagonals are perpendicular. Okay, you could draw that picture and label it. You could write these two things down. Not our main goal today, but those are important facts for you to study and know. The proof that I do want to look at today looks like this. Okay, and this is a different shape. It's not specifically a parallelogram. It is not specifically a kite. It is a rhombus. Okay, so we have to remember the definition of a rhombus is that all four sides are congruent. So as you can see, my picture's not that great. Okay, but that's okay. If it's a rhombus, if we're told it's a rhombus, then it means those four side lengths are all the same. Okay, so I'm going to start by saying ABCD is a rhombus. Whatever the given information is, that's where we start our proof. Okay, and I'm going to say given. Literally given, that's what they told us. Okay, and then at the bottom, I'm eventually going to have to prove that those two angles are the same. I don't know what to do here, but I see, hopefully we're seeing this, AC and AC congruent to itself. Remember that 721 is talking about two congruent triangles. So now I have three sides of one triangle, the same as three sides of another. I can prove that those two triangles are congruent. Okay, so I can start with CD is congruent to, and then you can pick because all four of those pink sides are congruent. Okay, CD from one triangle is congruent. I'm just going to go CB as if it were a reflection. You could also do AB as if it were a rotation. It would be the same in this proof. Okay, and I'm going to say the reason. Now, the reason wasn't given. They didn't tell me they were the same. I had to know the definition of a rhombus. Okay, the definition of a rhombus is a quadrilateral with 4 congruent sides. Okay, so I talked about CD and CB. Now I need to talk about these other two. DA is congruent to AB. Again, how do I know that? Well, I know the definition of a rhombus. Okay, my last step has nothing to do with the fact that it's a rhombus. Okay, that would be true in any shape, that AC is congruent to AC. And again, by now, I want you to know that that is the reflexive property. Write it down, make sure you spell it right, the reflexive property. Okay? So again, we didn't need to know that it was a rhombus to do the reflexive property, but we did need to know that it was a rhombus to get those two sets of sides to be the same. Now, what does that prove? It proves that my two triangles are congruent. So triangle CDA is congruent to, don't put similar, triangle. Now, I tell you all the time that the order of your letters matters, and that's still true, but these are both isosceles. So when you say CDA, I just made sure I did the pink sides first, so I could either say CBA or ABC, either one would be correct in this case. Okay, the reason all three sides are congruent, so side, 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 congruence. Okay, I've proven that the two triangles are congruent, but they don't want me to prove triangles congruent. I have to go one more step. Okay, and this is new and this is important for today, that because we have already proven that the two triangles are congruent, we know that their corresponding parts must be congruent, right? If I used patty paper and I said that this is exactly congruent to that, whether it's a reflection or rotation, those angles must be congruent, okay? D and B, they're in the middle here, so D and B must match up. So angle B is congruent to angle D. Now, this is really important that you write this down and you write it down carefully. The reason is corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. It is really important you write down all of those words. Corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. Again, that means if we know that two triangles are congruent, then we can make the conclusion that their corresponding parts are also congruent. Okay? This right here is really, really, really important that you practice and know and understand for this chapter.